Jim Agnew joins the show. Jim, how's it going, man?
Hey, Jim.
Good as always.
It's great, man. I there's a real reason why you're here.
Yes.
We need to talk.
We need to talk about a few things, but one of them being, we were talking the other day about that article that came out, said, LA or California is going to become the next Detroit. And
yeah, let's jump right in. I want your comments on that.
Okay, well, just a little bit on my back history. I've produced and put together maybe 20 films and done 5 or 6 of them in LA. The last 2 years, we've done a movie in Italy, in Mississippi, and Kentucky. And the reason why is because you can't shoot in California anymore or LA. And, I see all these people signing petitions about, let's increase the incentives and things like that. But I don't think that's going to help at all. And I don't mean to be like, I want it. I'm from LA. I'm from California. I want the business back. We don't want to, as producers, go to other places. But there's such a litany of problems with the way California's set up. And the number one being that, compare this incentive to other incentives. I don't know if you guys know this, but the above the line costs in California are not applied. So that means actors, directors, producers, none of their salaries you get any kind of rebate on or incentive.
Right.
So, and on top of that, it's also a system where it's kind of, there's a jobs formula. So pretty much everything that's going to happen and it's always been like this, is that it's going to be studio stuff. No independent films are going to qualify for the incentives. I don't know anybody who's ever gotten it that does indie films in 20 years of doing this.
Well, you were telling me that there's a lottery. There's money. You apply for this lottery. You either get it or you don't. But I want to break up our conversation by topic. So let's talk about this idea first of production in California and why it's gone so sideways. And you told me something shocking, that production will never return to California.
I don't think it will. And there's lots of reasons for that. The big one being that above the line incentive, where even if they double what's available, the way it's structured, it's not competitive with any other state or country.
Can you explain above the line incentive?
Yeah, above the line means you can apply the star's salary, the directors, the producers, and the script. Which let's say you make a Marvel movie for $30 million and you shot in LA, you would not get any incentive on that $30 million for the actor's salary. Now, if you go to London and you shoot the same Marvel movie, you get $12, $14 million back from the government for doing that. So you just spent, I don't know, 16 million instead of 30. So it kind of becomes really quickly like, well, what should we do? Should we shoot in California or somewhere else? So, and most incentives don't have that. Some states have it capped at like you can only spend like $1 million or $2 million. But I just did a movie in Kentucky and we could put as much as we wanted through there. Mississippi is the same way. Georgia, you can, all the actors' salaries, the producer, the director, all those really high-end costs are part of the incentive. And in California, it's not. So that's the first big problem. That's a big money problem. The other problem is in California, locations are so expensive. It's insane how much it costs. I just did a movie in Kentucky. We rented an entire courthouse for 2 days, and the price was $200 for the parking lot across the street and the security guards. If we had rented that same courthouse in LA County, it would have cost us probably $50,000 a day. So, on a $2 million movie, we just saved a ton of money. So that's a big part of it. And not only that is in LA, I hate saying this, but people have become very savvy about how the film business works. I don't know how many times we shot a movie where we showed up, we negotiated a deal for a bodega. We're going to pay $5,000. We get there that morning with the crew, trucks, everything. And they say, we want 10 grand. They don't
just throw it out. Like,
yeah. They're like, or go somewhere else because they know you're stuck. And then what happens is you pay them an extra 5 grand. Then the neighbors know how to juice you for money. They'll be like, you're on our sidewalk. You're screwing up our business. We want 2 grand. It just escalates from there. Where I did a movie in Alabama where we wanted to rent a bar. And basically they were like, can we bring all our employees? Can we have them work as extras for free? And they gave us the bar for free and brought all their employees because they were excited. They weren't jaded about it. So that's another big problem is locations. They're so expensive in LA. Permits, then you got to shut down streets. You have to hire those, those cops you see on the scene where they're, standing around. Those are all ex-LAPD guys that you're forced to have a certain amount of them by what you're doing with your permit. Right. So now you're paying those guys. And also, it's not easy to like deal with people in LA because, you also have the unions are really close. Look, I'm a union guy, so don't get me wrong. I'm in the WGA, but I worked on a movie once where the first day of shooting, IATSE showed up, DGA showed up, not WGA didn't, but SAG did. Just representatives to make sure we were doing everything right. And we had a gaffer who was pressing a button to create the hazer, right? That's just the smoke, between scenes. And they said, you can't have that guy pressing that button. So now you have to bring in a guy at $350 a day to press the button. So
really?
Yeah.
Is it everybody's looking for a taste, right? They get their hand out.
The problem is there's a lot of union rules. I'm in a union. I understand it. But, when you're doing a big studio film or TV, great. That's cool. Spend tons of money. But if you're doing a $2 to $5 million indie film, you can't do that. And then on top of it, when you do a union film, you have to pay pension and health, which is like 22% on all the SAG actors. It's above and beyond their salary. All the crew members, all the grips, camera crew, everybody who's in IATSE, DGA, you have to do that. So you start getting into a realm of like doing a $2 million movie where you're paying $400,000 just in pension and health. That's not going on the screen, and I get it. Like I said, I'm not saying there shouldn't be unions. It's just the way the system's structured is very difficult to make films in LA.
There's some common sense things you can employ that doesn't drive up the cost like that.
Yeah.
And for guy to press the button.
Another thing you need to buy a lot of on a movie is fuel. You got to power the generators. You got to move trucks. California's, from what I know, is more expensive than anywhere else to buy gas. So, there's all these like systemic problems that no one's like taken any kind of leadership on. In like, now all of a sudden it's in the news, and people are like, let's do this, let's do that. But productions have been leaving for like 15 years from LA. I did the first movie in Alabama. We produced a film in 2012 when they first did their incentive. We went over there, spent $10 million, got $3 million back. So, I want films to come back here, but I don't know what they're doing to really make it. It's a lot of just bullshit, really, because there's some new thing the city council is doing to make permits streamlined and help. It's supposed to help production. It ain't gonna do shit. It's like literally gonna affect 0.001% of the budget of your film.
Well, let me ask you, because just producing indie movies, really production value is cast, which is kind of a cost you're locked in, and location is also production value.
Yeah.
When you're going somewhere like LA has been filmed a lot in TV and film, locations are known. Is there kind of an excitement to like just going to like Kentucky and seeing different locations and getting them for cheap? I mean, you can really stretch your budget.
I think so, because you see all these new things and certain states you can shoot for different places. It just looks interesting and run down. It doesn't look like LA. I was subscribed to like a lot of films, unless it's specific to the story, you should be like David Fincher and just, not say where you're at in 7, just make it look cool and weird and different. But there's a lot of that. Yeah. You could, in Kentucky, we were amazed. We were one of the first movies over there too, that came in, and we did that in 2023. And it was amazing. There were so many cool locations, things we've never seen, big bridges, rivers, all kinds of things. And we would just be like, hey, can we shoot here? They're like, sure. We'd have a proper permit, but it wasn't a bunch of bureaucracy to shoot 3 blocks down the street. The one cop who was assigned to the production would just pull his car down there, block up the street, and let us shoot. In LA, that would become a whole gigantic problem.
I'm kind of confused, but why is that specific to Los Angeles compared to any other city in the United States?
Bureaucracy.
And it's because they're there and they can get to your set.
I mean, look, I've never shot New York, but I've heard that's a really hard thing to do too. But New York has the incentive, and New York, has its own film office. So that, shooting in these big cities also is a bit of a problem. That, that's just inherent to the size and the scope of things. And again, everybody's jaded. Everybody's just like, oh, another film set, get out of the way. I got to get to work.
Right. But I mean, what are some of the reasons you believe production will never return to California? And look, there are concerns, unrelated, but related somehow, that LA will not be able to accommodate the Olympics in terms of what they're constructing an extension to the metro to try to make it easier. There are concerns in 2028. You haven't heard this, Alan?
No, I haven't. Doesn't surprise me, but I haven't heard.
Yeah, they're just saying there are doubts. And a lot of people that were bidding on the Olympics, a lot of cities backed out because of concerns. I mean, can you see, look, I was too young to remember the riots in Detroit City, but I saw the effects of the riots in Detroit. Everyone fled to the suburbs and Detroit decayed, and the auto industry went downhill for various different reasons. But do you think production is it's now just going to be, I mean, Alan told the story about, was it that game show, Alan?
Oh yeah, it was Rob Lowe's game show. I think it was The Floor, and that they discovered that it was cheaper to fly everybody, all the contestants, 100 people to Ireland, shoot it in Ireland, than it was to shoot it at the Fox lot in Century City.
Yeah, because you don't have to pay if you go to socialized medicine country. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. If you go to a country with socialized medicine, you don't have to pay pension and health. You might have to pay a little bit of pension, but they all have health care. So you're not paying that 22% on top of everybody. Just, everybody across the board, from the gaffer to the grip to the dolly, everybody needs to be paid that. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I'm just saying it just becomes, cost prohibitive. And the other thing is too, especially with indie film, the margins are getting tighter and tighter. Streamers are paying less. So you can make money. Every movie I've worked on has made money, thank God. But the margins are getting very slim. So if you don't do everything right, you can lose your ass. And that's the other thing too. It's like if all these movies start being made where they're making no money or losing money, there's not going to be any movies. That's just business. And LA, I think, back to what you guys are saying about the Olympics, I think LA across the board and California, this isn't like a red or blue issue or Democrat or Republican. We have a complete lack of creative thinking across the board. Mm-hmm. There's not many people who have any kind of business background or think about anything like that. I mean, look, I just moved from Hollywood. I was in Hollywood for a long time. I live in Burbank now, right down the street from Chris. But
yeah.
But Hollywood has their councilwoman's Nathaya Rahman, right? She represents Hollywood. Her husband's a big TV, producer and writer. He doesn't do shows in LA. His shows are all being shot in New York and other rebate places right now. So if the person who's the city council person who represents Hollywood is living with someone who goes somewhere else, what chance do we have to fix any of this?
69.
Yeah. I think I think the, elected officials really don't understand business. They're sort of full-time working in public service, no experience as small business people. I mean, that's why over COVID, I mean, the restrictions that were put on small businesses were criminal. They were criminal. When you saw the woman who owned the Pineapple Hill Saloon kicked out of her, not able to do business, had to lay off all her employees while there was a Hollywood production shooting right next door, no understanding or empathy for those businesses.
Yeah. And another thing, you guys, I'm sure have seen that all these legacy restaurants are going out of business, like just the last 6 months. And it's like, why doesn't LA City just say, okay, we're going to put a moratorium on leases for commercial property for 2 years? Because that's what they're all complaining about, their leases going out. But they don't think like that. No one's thinking in a business sense. And I think they've really just taken the film industry for granted, that it's here, it's doing all this stuff, but it's been leaving for like 15, 20 years progressively. Now it's like everybody, I feel like California and LA are sitting here going, what are we going to do? While the last 20 years, everybody's lapped them intellectually in how to deal with this problem.
Yeah, it's very sad, but it's also, as an indie producer, you've made movies in the several $1 million budget, not anything too big. But when you see the big studios going other places, they go where they get the deal. But you're kind of playing whack-a-mole with like, well, this state has this state has this, and the states compete for your business as a producer.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been on many productions where we were going to go to Spain on the last movie I was a producer on, and we were doing all the paperwork and everything, and then we realized we could kind of save more money by going to Mississippi. And literally 3 weeks before shooting, it's like, we're going to Mississippi. That happens a lot, more than you guys would realize, where literally you've applied for the tax rebate, you're doing all the paperwork, because some states charge you a few $1,000, some don't charge you anything if you have your financing in place. So it's I don't want to get in the weeds on that, but you can apply at multiple places and either use it or not. But, you know, it's easy to just kind of shuck and jive and go, oh, we can make more money. Oh, they have 40% now. You know, I get these calls all the time that like Missouri, I guess, has 40% now. And if you shoot in the city, it's 50. So everybody wants to go to Missouri now. And it's not that people are like that greedy. It's just the only way to make a profit, because distributors, we talked about this, distributors are trying to take 30, 40% off the top now. Distributors, like sales agents and stuff. And they never did that before. It's like they all kind of got together to talk to each other and said, here's what we're going to do now, you know? So the margins are very low. And if you don't have these kind of things to help you, it becomes you're upside down before you even start.
Well, what is your prediction then? What happens now that production, I mean, I'll just say how I've observed it. I want to hear your thoughts. I know people who haven't worked in a year or years. I know people who are pivoting their career to go to culinary school, to not work in film or TV. Just, you know, there's always jobs to be a chef or a cook. So what's the fallout? And I think it's like this quiet thing where no one is telling the truth. What is the truth?
Yeah, I think you're right. Lots of people. Here's the thing. Let me backtrack one step. Is when you're above the line, like a director, producer, and even actors to some extent, let's say you're the main actor, you know, you're a star actor, you can go anywhere and work, you know, but if you're a working actor who's only doing like a week or a couple days and you want to go work in Kentucky, but you're based in LA, SAG makes you pay more money. You're not a local hire. If you're a local hire, you don't have to travel. We don't have to put you up. We don't have to, you know, get you per diem. But if we want to hire, if we're shooting a movie in Kentucky and we want to hire an LA actor for a week, we have to pay like twice as much. And that's just the union rules. Same thing with IATSE. Like if you go to Kentucky and you want this awesome, you know, dolly grip to come work for you, you've got to put him up. You got to fly him out. You have to pay per diem, as opposed to maybe finding the third best dolly grip in Kentucky, you know, and just making it work. And that's what's happening. And I feel really bad. I'll be okay because I can go pretty much anywhere. And there's also a certain level, this is what nobody talks about. There's a certain level of glamour to talk to a couple producers, a director, and some lead actors and go, hey, do you want to go to Mississippi or do you want to go to Greece for 6 weeks? You know, it's like, or do you want to go shoot a movie in LA and go to Lincoln Heights? You know, so it becomes that thing too, where it's oh, cool. I can get out of here and get a trip all paid for and have some fun. So, you know, but the crew people below the line, like we were talking about, all the working class crew and people who run a movie and make a movie, they can't do that. So they're kind of stuck wherever they are. They can still get jobs other places, but unless there's a lot of money to make the film, they're not going to fly those guys in.
Well, what's the truth then about? Is there a whisper network of people who are actually saying something has to be done?
Or I think the better question is, why are people not saying anything? Why are people?
Yeah, why are people silent about this?
Like I said, I think they've just taken the business for granted all these years, because suddenly Trump starts talking about tariffs, and then all these people are trying to get on board about a federal, like, you know, where, you know, Adam Schiff was my congressman for 10, 12 years. He never did anything. You know, now suddenly as the senator, he's trying to like act like he's doing stuff. You know, these people, they just don't, like I said, it's not even a party thing. It's more about either they're looking out for business or they're not. And they're not looking out for business. We all live in LA. I mean, how many businesses are out of business now? You know, you drive down the street.
It's unbelievable the number of restaurants. Restaurants is the residual effect. because people in the industry don't have money to eat out. It's as simple as that. People aren't working. I'm talking about industry people are not getting paid. They're not going out to eat. And
No,
so
they
then
can't
you
even pay their
see
pension.
restaurants.
I keep hearing too, a lot of people, a lot of old timers in the unions that have, always got their health insurance for 20, 25 years that now can't, are just going to all go on disability. They're like, fuck the state, I'll go on disability. I mean, you didn't hear that from me, but, but I'm not saying specific people, but these are the things I hear that, people are so disillusioned with, that no one's working. I hear it all the time. No one's working. No one's working. We were talking about how I'm in the WGA. Writers' jobs are down like what 45% from 2 years ago. That's half.
I was going to ask you about WGA has contracted. The number of working writers is less than it's ever been. And then I think it was another stat where was it half of the WGA members made like 45 grand?
I think I told you. I think. Yeah, what I've heard time and time again is there's about 12,000 people in the WGA, and only half. This was even before the contraction the last year or two. Yeah. About that, only half of them make 45 grand or more, which is what you need to make your health insurance. Yeah. So that means there's only about 6,000 people really working in TV and film consistently. But now take 40% of that away. So what is it now? 3,500.
Alan, do the math.
Oh yeah.
You do the math, Alan. But here's the thing though. It's like I always look at when things go to shit, there's an opportunity. And I think for young filmmakers and filmmakers in general, there's a lot of opportunity to use the chaos to your advantage, make films, but you've got to make them cheaper, and you've got to make them smart. There's still a market for it, even with, I don't want to get into this whole Trump tariff thing, but I got about 50 phone calls Monday morning and I hadn't read the news. I was like, wait, what's going on? And, the consensus is kind of that's going to fade away. It's going to because it's not like selling a pair of shoes. If you make a pair of shoes in China and sell it in America, you can add $40 to the cost. Films are sold, this is all over the globe. You sell a movie like 80 times on the first run to all the different territories and all the different, it would be so chaotic and weird that it would just, if that was the case, there would be no film industry.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about it on Monday and it just seemed like that, if anything, it just got the conversation started. Trump brought this weird idea out of nowhere and presented it to everybody. And quite frankly, he's the first person to make this kind of a national issue and to shine the spotlight on what the problem that is going on in Hollywood.